I think to start off with, it would be brilliant if you could just maybe explain a little bit more. It's great to have a title which is all about consumer generated content or user generated content. So, why is authentic content important to Sainsbury's? And I guess why have they invested in you and your team to really build out this capability?
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose that's real evidence there how highly Sainsbury's as a business kind of regards social content, social proofing. So yeah, there are a team of 4 or 5 of us, both onshore and over in Accenture in India who support, and that is testament, I suppose, to all of the different types of UGC that we see or consumer generated content. So I know we'll obviously focus on the visual element today, but we also look after product reviews. We've got customer Q&A that also sit alongside that. And I think it's really compelling. We're kind of pulling all of those stories together, making sure this is a kind of full funnel execution. And we're trying to drive our visual content sit alongside that. I think to add to that, there is also some recent UK legislation, so the DMCCA, Digital Markets Consumer and Competitions Act, and that is all around fake reviews. But I think it goes a step further and actually looks at all forms of content that customers kind of create and ensures that retailers or brands aren't sort of repurposing that and making it misleading for customers. So that authenticity, social proof is kind of the cornerstone of customer trust, as well as being an incredibly strong sort of conversion driver for us across our e-commerce channels and beyond.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. And is there, you mentioned obviously you're covering not just Sainsbury's for food, but also Habitat too and Argos. Um, does it play different roles in the different brands, or how does UGC play a role in your wider content and marketing strategy?
Yeah, so broadly, we do have the same solutions available across each of our websites, each of our apps, but actually that strategy does differ between each of those brands. So, for instance, we're live on the homepage with story stream content on our Sainsbury's grocery program. We aren't yet there from an Argos perspective, but on the flip side, we are actually there from a PDP perspective. So, if you look at those differently, customers from a food perspective are more likely to add to their basket from a lister page level. So the PDP becomes slightly less important. We see far fewer visits to that page. On the reverse, Argos, you're more likely to hit a PDP. So actually ensuring that we've got a full execution, we've got visual content, we've got product reviews, user generated content, social proof is absolutely critical. So yeah, there are absolutely differences there, a few differences in terms of maturity. But ultimately, our aim here is to make sure that this is a hygiene factor. Visual content actually becomes really commonplace. It should be or it is fast becoming a customer expectation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. And were there any specific challenges that you had been facing when you're sourcing UGC that you've been trying to overcome?
Yeah, so if we were to look back at that kind of community page that you just pulled up a second ago, I think there's real opportunity for us to ensure that we are covering each of those touch points, because today we're heavily reliant on the organic side of things, and that's put us in a really good stead. So customers are freely sharing their content, but actually there's some real opportunities for us to go above and beyond. So we are now asking for employee content, for instance, from our Sainsbury's colleagues. We aren't yet for Argos, so there's an opportunity in that space. So yeah, I think it's just making sure that actually the scaling of that opportunity, that we are asking customers, we are asking colleagues, and consistently, which we are aiming to do over the next few weeks and months with the tooling that's available.
Brilliant. And Charlotte, could you go back to, I think it was the next slide after our
Sorry.
bios. And I think, Tom, this was interesting. I talked earlier about sending an email post-purchase to consumers to then ask for content. I'd love you to talk through how you've been doing that using content briefs, and also maybe touch on how you see the request for a review differently to the request for inspirational visual content. Would be brilliant to hear from your point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a standardized platform across each of our brands whereby we're contacting customers post-purchase, asking for a product review. What's new is actually this. So content brief with our food execution currently. We're looking to fast follow and roll this out across the rest of our domains. But this is really specific. This is giving customers the opportunity to, as we're calling it, be our homepage hero. So we're asking them to upload their content. We're being fairly specific in terms of some of the examples we're showing there. But if I take me, straw poll of one, as an example, I'm not someone that's going to go and share content across my personal Instagram profile, for instance. Whereas this is a really nice way for me to direct upload It's very clear what's being asked of me. And actually, it's completely, I suppose, disconnected. There's no connection with my personal profile. So, as a user, I think you're more willing to share some of that content that you wouldn't necessarily put on your profiles. If we take Argos as an example, how many people are going to upload photos of, I don't know, a new television, for instance, or home and garden furniture? Whereas actually, what we do see from a direct upload perspective, when we're able to be quite deliberate in terms of what we're asking, that's where the opportunity lies to scale that content.
And Tom, in our view, one of the key things is if you show people, right, we'd like you to upload your pictures, but typically if you do that alongside reviews, you get a picture of the product on the floor, it's focused on the size, or it worked or it didn't work, etc. Whereas if you give them these types of inspirational images, and in your case, you've said, if you give us a great image, you can be our homepage hero, you tend to get the same type of content as you would expect to see on social because someone is trying to make them and the product look good and be inspirational. So I think it's key. The way you ask will define the type of content that you get back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the beauty of the content brief, where again you can be super pointed and targeted in terms of some of the content you are asking from your customers, from your employees, whoever it may be. So yeah, I suppose separate to this, we also have a version internally that we're asking our colleagues from a Sainsbury's perspective to upload their content. And again, there's opportunity for us to kind of finesse that, change the wording, ask deliberately what we're asking for our customers. But I would caveat that with the fact that this remains entirely authentic. So from if I go back to that DMCCA mention at the top of the call, there are guidelines in place. This is a very different proposition to that of reviews, but it's a great opportunity for advocates of our business to share content more freely, increase coverage, and then the knock-on effect of interaction and conversion from there.
Brilliant. And if you can, Charlotte, if you can just go on to the next one. So this is one of our favorite products around here. What do we call it? The chessboard trinket, etc.
We'll go with that.
This is more broadly, not specifically around content briefs, but around UGC. I'd love just to hear your story about this, Tom.
Yeah, so the trinket now on the right hand side there was actually sold out for a short period of time. And I think the real beauty of this example is actually we're not reliant on product reviews as a social proof form here. There are a couple, but they're kind of in the single digit numbers. Actually, what's been really compelling with this particular PDP on the right hand side is customers have been freely sharing organically across their social profiles. And actually, it's really brought that product to life. So there's a few examples that have been shown here, but you can see that product in situ to Cameron's point. The photos we've got are quite dull, they're quite plain. There's some kind of cut out white background, but this brings it to life, gives you ideas. There's various use cases that people have got there. So they've got it on tables, they've got it on bedside tables, etc., etc. So I think that's the real beauty of sort of the nature of social content that's coming through from our customers.
So if any of you've got piles of keys or whatever at your front door, then there are a few. I think it was sold out, but there's a few more back in stock somewhere in your local Argos, etc. And Tom, I think you said you had a few sort of data points that you might be able to share or patterns that you could around the impact of having UGC on some of these different sites is having.
Yeah, so again, said at the top of the call, but there's two kind of benefits here that we're sort of, or purposes, I suppose, that we're aiming for. So the first is conversion driving, so rankings and reviews, social content, the visual element, but also that customer trust, which is a little more difficult to kind of quantify. But from a conversion driving perspective, and we've actually just got these kind of data sets, so super exciting to share internally. But we're seeing that customers who visit an Argos PDP, so much like you're seeing on screen there, interact with the content are converting more than 50% higher than customers that don't. So the next challenge for us is how do we ensure that we've got coverage across more products, because there is opportunity for us to scale there, but also ensure that this content is a prominent type within our product page. There's obviously it's real estate, so there's going to be some challenges internally, but now turning up to those conversations to say this is the value that this form of data, this form of content, is bringing to the table is a super compelling thing to have from a business case perspective. So we also see across some of the other core metrics, so ads trolley, average order value, revenue per visit, that they are positively trending. And there's some validation to do across the rest of the group, but yeah, early days are super compelling numbers.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Tom, for showing that. And we see similar patterns, not always that amazing. That impressive. That's an amazing uplift of 50%, but we're generally seeing the same patterns of significant uplift in engagement and conversion when people interact with this content. And so, as you said, the next challenge is, with some of our customers, we have up to 50% product coverage, with some that maybe have, product catalogs of more like 1,000 items, etc. When you've got, I can't remember if it's the figure in Argos, it's a pretty large catalog. Obviously, it's a challenge to go, how do we scale that? And I think there are a number of tactics, but one of them, as we say, is use content briefs to send out post-purchase. Say, you've just bought this, we want more content. Or other people have a challenge of, I've got a new product, it's a new car, or it's a new launch of a new clothing item that's not yet in the market. I don't yet have UGC. We'll send a content brief to your brand ambassadors or employees or influencers that do have that. And indeed, in auto, they often have the life cycle of, I'm going to start with my brand social teaser, then I'm going to have some PR review content, then I'm going to have some employee or brand ambassador type content, then we'll start to see the UGC flow as that product comes into market. Obviously, slightly longer life cycles than a clothing item or a chessboard trinket. But always, if you think about, if you know the results are impactful, how quickly can StoryStream help you get from 5 or 10% product coverage to 50% or 100%? And I think content briefs is going to play a key part in that. I guess just sort of looking ahead, Tom, as you think about the role of authentic content and how that's going to evolve in Sainsbury's, or any advice you have to other brands that are saying, right, how should I do this more effectively? What would be your thoughts or advice on that? And then if people are, whilst Tom's giving you an answer to that, think of other questions that you may have and just pop them in the Q&A channel.
Yeah, good question. I think it probably goes back to that community phase page that we showed again, just a reference. So we've seen real success from 2 or 3 of those kind of streams, if you like. But actually, I think there's an opportunity for us to extend that, and it will work for some brands, and some sort of routes of content collection won't for others. So yeah, I think that's absolutely critical to make sure that we aren't reliant on organic content from a general merchandise and food perspective. We've seen the value from content briefs. We've seen the value from employees. How do we then go and embed that with our colleagues from a social perspective more broadly, because that actually sits outside of us. And then the other part for me is just ensuring that we're repurposing that in the right way. So as I say, we do a pretty good job of collecting content. We're displaying that across some pretty key content places across our digital channels. But what is the future? Is there an opportunity for us to have that in store? Can we help customers wayfind? Can we potentially include that as an evergreen within some of our emails? So yeah, I again referenced this earlier in the call, but I think this is becoming a kind of a customer expectation as opposed to a nice to have. So yeah, I think it's one of those to get on the journey pretty quickly. Otherwise, you'll be left behind pretty soon.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Tom. One of the questions just come in, and I'll probably give it a go, and then I'll ask Tom to answer his view on it as well. So thank you, Seal, for this question is, what do we think about AI generated content? And I think interestingly, we are working with AI a lot. We're working with AI from the point of view of helping match UGC content to what the product is. We're also using AI to also visualize and give content insights, etc. But we also start to play with, well, what's it like when you're generating content with AI? And it obviously is becoming increasingly effective. I think the balance in terms of it's easier to do and it looks okay. I think the balance is that if the consumer knows that it's Gen AI, but it's telling a story for a particular reason, I think it's okay. But it's not authentic if you're trying to portray that as real content. And so when someone wants social proof, and you'll see in our experiences, there's generally an actual name, or in some cases, if it's from social, you can have a link back to that social profile. They're saying, well, is this a real person that's saying this about this product? And then I would trust it more than if it's just a computer generated image, or maybe it was an original image that's been adjusted by AI, which is potentially a halfway house that is more acceptable. But I think it's important to badge that against this is a real person. And I think we'll see the social networks trying to be more proficient about saying, "Oh, this is a real profile or this is an AI profile," because obviously, as you know, on a lot of the social networks, a lot of the profiles are fake AI profiles, which is fine, but I think the consumers need to know that. So, rather long answer from me. Tom, your thoughts? Have you been playing around with generating different variants of product images with AI, or?
Yeah, I think I've probably got exactly the same view, so not a huge amount to add. Not totally relevant to the visual side of things, but I think it may be a bit of a correlation from a written review perspective. You can very easily tell which has been created using AI and which has been used, kind of crafted by a customer direct. And I suppose if we can try and get to see that difference from a visual perspective, that's going to be key. And it goes back to Cameron's point. If you can have a look at a customer's profile, that's then I suppose proof that they are a human. So yeah, I'm hesitant around the kind of AI generated content. Authenticity absolutely paramount to what we do. So I think it's one to stick close to. But yeah, there aren't answers on that one just yet.
Excellent. Charlotte,
Right.
other questions?
Yes, so I do have a question around how easy have you found setting up content briefs and perhaps customizing it for different campaigns?
Yes, very easy is the answer. So I mentioned we are live on the Sainsburys grocery post interaction email. We are also live from an employee perspective. So we actually run a sampling program where we hand out products to a number of colleagues in return for written reviews. But as part of that, we're now pushing the visual user generated content with that. Real success story. We are looking to imminently, as I mentioned earlier, roll that out across the rest of our brands. So there's opportunity for us to be super descriptive over what kind of content we're after from our customers, to the point that Cameron made earlier, showcasing examples that they can follow so they have some sort of inspiration or idea of what we are after, but ultimately not leading them too specifically. So actually that authenticity does remain. But yeah, very easy to get content briefs up and running, very easy for us to amend them. So we've got an incentive, for instance, that's running on ours. That's super quick for us to go in and change with the team. So yeah, all positive from our side.
And I think from our customers' point of view, for some of the customers on it, obviously, if you want your CSM to help you with that in the initial case, we can. But obviously, the aim is to then put that into your hands or the hands of your team so that you can create these quickly and, without having to wait for us to do anything, etc.
Awesome. So we have 2 minutes left. So I think unless anyone has any final questions, we will have to